Very happy to bring this session to Operations Nation together with our partners from Trustkeith. Trustkeith and Operations Nation have partnered for the last 5 years, so a really long time. And they came in to help our community to be more data-centric, and they work with companies who want to become data compliant and stay compliant and do it in, I don't want to say fun way, but it's definitely less boring than any other companies I have worked with in the past. From Trustkeith, we have Kayleigh, who's a lead DPO. And when we were preparing for this event, she shared a quote. She said, data protection is people protection. And I was like, this is what we need to talk about. Not complying with any regulations because we have to, but because we really care about our customers and we need to create this trust for anyone who comes and uses our products and services. We also have Patel. He is head of operations at Bioniq, who are a leading healthcare company, and they specialize in personalized nutritional supplements. They have offices in the UK and the US, Germany, Switzerland, UAE. So you can imagine the amount of paperwork probably. I'm really curious to hear about your journey in data protection because I can only about handle one market. So this is going to be great. And we also have Emilie, who is a legal compliance and operations lead, and she's got wealth of experience leading legal compliance and operations function at a number of fast-growing tech companies. So again, a lot of great stories to share. And a quick intro to me, I'm Aušrinė. I am one of the co-founders at Operations Nation. I don't anymore have operations in my title, but I am somehow still responsible for data protection at Operations Nation. And last but not least, we have all of you on the school. So thank you so much for your interest. Thanks for joining. You are a very diverse group of operations leaders, mostly from Series A or B for a reason on this call. And you're here probably because data protection falls on your plates, and you came with all types of questions from, are we doing enough, to how do we do it all, or at least some of it with no resources. But I think, honestly, going back to what Kayleigh said, it can be really interesting if we just reframe it from we have to do it because we have to comply to we get to do it because this is going to create more trust and just going to bring us more people to use our products and services. All right, so as we go into the conversations, so Al, can't wait to hear your story shared at a very complicated company in my eyes.
What can we say about Bioniq? Bioniq started in a little history lesson. We started in 2019. We were basically working through the UK market, and then it scaled up to open up new markets. So at the very beginning, we had UK, we opened up to UAE, Germany, and then we got our big breakthrough sort of January 2024. We opened up to the US market, and that's when we saw our pace really accelerate quite drastically. So from when we started, GDPR and data protection was literally trying to get checkbox for the situation, as we probably ever received is spreadsheets, checking off, having all the correct folders in the document, but then not knowing how to when to utilize it or how strict you have to be with that data or how we look to. Like we had a question earlier, it was like saying, how do you deal with someone's data deletion request?
Yeah.
Where do we put it? How serious is it? Is it something we need to go through and rebuild our tech models? What do we need to do? We learned as we went along. Trust was a key component for us. I think we're lucky as we're in the UK and GDPR was quite strong and stringent compared to the rest of the world. Europe was also strong. So having that as our basis gave us a good platform then to expand the horizons quite easily. We tried to keep to that threshold, that limit of what we had for GDPR in the UK, and replicate that across everything we used to do. Obviously, there are still things we need to understand and learn, and supply contracts with everyone else, and people will leave, and loss of information, loss of knowledge from internally. So where do we keep that information?
Amazing. So it's basically having a blueprint, and it's great that there was already GDPR in the UK. That was about 2018, wasn't it? May 2018? ish.
So we started in 2019. So
Mhm.
when you started expanding, it was 2021, 2021. We wanted to increase the user base that we had access to.
Yeah.
And using blood test data, we always had to rely on, because we weren't actually processing the data, we were just data processors, we're not controlling it. So that definition in itself was something crucial for us to understand. Where do we lie? Are we a controller? Are we a processor? Is this set up correctly in our supply contracts? Who's responsible for the data?
Yeah.
So that was key for us.
Yeah.
So then the supply contracts we had with the blood test labs was that make sure that they were the controllers. They were the processors, we control the data.
That was definitely one of the most confusing things when GDPR came about. Everybody was discussing, who are you? Processor, are you controller? Are you both? Probably not neither. And when you came to Series B, after your Series B round, what were the major priorities for Bioniq then, as you started preparing for it or afterwards?
So once you hit that sort of threshold, everything's accelerated for growth. So the whole company pivots and goes, we've done this, we've done great beforehand. Now we can double down and make it even better to make sure that we have feasible product. So we need to make sure that we have suitable velocity. And then you realize we're moving at such speed. Everybody else get left behind. So we're sort of catching up, trying to understand, dot the I's, cross the T's, make sure we're compliant with regulations across everything. We try to make sure that we are the best at everything we do. Trust is there, privacy is there, regulations are met across the borders for nutraceuticals, blood tests, everything we need to understand, we're compliant. As long as we're compliant, and then we're regularly updating and auditing it. That's one thing we thought that we were lacking with that old DPO. It was literally like we were looking at it, goes, have we done this? Where is he? What's happening? Are we aware of any changes in regulations? Are we finding things out post regulation change because the DPO wasn't keeping us up to date?
Mhm.
So that's another challenge that we had to face. And that's why we'll look for someone else that will be a bit more proactive and take us along the journey, keep us up to date, help us prioritize what was actually the key points for data protection and privacy. So give that trust to everyone else, and so everyone understands that we treat their data with care.
And when you say we, because that is a very interesting word in the data protection in the context, in a lot of companies, we means this only operations person who's trying to keep the company compliant. And I'm very curious, in your context, does we mean leadership team? Was it you that was pushing for compliance? How did it all work?
So I'm quite fortunate because my CEO is also a co-founder. So he's also very keen to make sure that we are on top of these. So without his input, we can't really do much.
Yeah.
So we're a very lean team. And we want to make sure that we can keep that way so we can make changes. Whatever actionable insights we receive,
Yeah.
we can actually action it and make it tangible for everyone to receive and view and understand.
It's incredibly important to have the buy-in from the leadership team, especially when it comes from the founders. So I think that's a very fortunate position to be in. Not always a position that everybody has in their organizations. Tell me more in terms of the international expansion and the privacy and compliance implications at the Series B growth. What was your experience there? What were those implications?
So when we got Series B, we acquired another company in Germany, and they had a dedicated DPO. So we utilized his knowledge, and he was part of that. So he understood everything. So that was something we did. We inherited a very good team that was regulated from Germany, and the regulations in Germany are much more stricter than they are in the UK. So then that became the benchmark. And then what happened is that they have their DPO in Germany, we had a DPO in the UK, and then we wanted to make sure that everything was merged for all the companies. So we have one point of call, one folder for all the folders, policies, etc. That's just just ran across all the countries that we had. So then once we had that his DPO understanding, then it was easy to replicate that across to the UAE, the US, and the set up entities in each place.
Makes sense. And then that particular shift where you have started approaching privacy in a different way, you mentioned that the internal owner left, there was a knowledge gap, and basically you started pulling everything and everyone together. Can you tell me a little bit more about that particular period when they left and when you started like really pulling resources together? What did your initial privacy processes look like? And you mentioned the spreadsheets, you mentioned being reactive as well. And what do they look like today in comparison? Because it's taking company from A to B, or like Series A to Series B, or in whatever context you.
So when you lose that internal knowledge, everyone's playing catch up, finding folders that aren't in the right places and finding information in different parts that no one's really shared or no one's really, you're dusting the cobwebs. So we went to look for a partner, which luckily trusted Kayleigh, that we could centralize everything. We understood that we had to start again from scratch. So what we did before wasn't really the fastest moving forward, because we wanted someone to have not just one person with knowledge, but everyone to have access to the knowledge. And that was the key thing for us, because even though we were legally compliant, were we reactive or were we be proactive? So now it's the case of build it into anything for automated that we're doing, to have that platform ready to then scale efficiently to any region agreement.
That's so important to have something central. I think having it is not enough, especially when the team changes. How do you all approach training and keeping people up to speed, especially when there are new regulations across the borders and also knowledge leaving and entering the company?
So it's not, from what I see, it's not really training as such, because that's really specialized for data protection. It's just raising awareness for places where clients will see or visibly see where data is possibly leaking or being used correctly or not being protected as well as it should be. So luckily, again, with Trustkeep, they've got Clapton where they give you the awareness training. It's just then disseminate that to everyone and then make this a fun part of culture in the company to people to finish it, use it, see who's the best, 100% the quickest, make it fun to understand what data protection is really should be.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's, as you say, it becomes everyone feels boring. Why are we doing this? Why have to be worried about tailgating people or closing your laptop or privacy screens or sharing passwords, things like that.
Yeah.
All the lovely things that we're going to ensure that things get clean, and restricting use for sensitive data to specific people, make sure it's not transfers over different platforms. Lots of little things that we need to keep aware of, and even that
100%.
awareness to the team is a great thing. So what they do, if the client comes up to them and says, I want to do this, and how deep do we have to dig? How much work is involved for us to do it? Because you want to, what I'm thinking of the latest things that we had was, did an online quiz, which is anonymous.
Yeah.
But then it goes afterwards, I'll delete all my data. So again, okay, if we need to go to the cookies and find out what it is, and that was it. There's no other data kept anywhere else.
Yeah.
It's one of these things you learn as you go along and find out that this is what it is, and there's quick wins that you can do. And there's other ones where you can set up, because if there's more and you stand up, you want to make sure that doesn't happen. So let's build it into our tech.
Yeah.
That's easily done. So let's tick a button. This does this, X, Y, and Z. And it's quite easy. Yeah, then
It's always prioritization. Makes sense. Yeah, there's a lot of fun checklists to do with your team to make sure that they understand the importance of data protection. But yeah, what you're talking about, the culture of data protection and privacy of the data within an organization is incredibly important, and gets more important as you grow as a company. What advice would you give to someone entering Series B and on how to prioritize privacy?
I think with that funding, it becomes very key that you're all going to grow very quickly. the first thing that you probably to do within the data quality is growth. So if you could set up quickly to be data compliant first, then the headaches for the data, cleaning the data, understanding the data, going back and pseudo anonymizing the data, it becomes much easier. So you can scale much efficiently and more compliant. So if you can, build it in as quick as possible, do the awareness as quick as possible. So when they have the volume of people asking, querying, purchasing, that we can do it correctly.
Yeah, could not agree more with you. I think having those foundations in place for data protection, to be honest, for anything, really, when it comes to operations, as you grow, that is incredibly important.
It's also clarifying that what is something that we have to action for data protection, because it's very grey area some of that. As is over the awareness and the understanding, you need to say, is this data deletion required? Is this, do we still need to use different processes for criminal, for legal stuff? Where's that level of deletion that we need to keep for how long?
Yeah. We're always learning. And I think one of the things that actually comes with operations and our sometimes weird and wonderful relationship with the product teams is like, what do you automate? Do you automate the deletion, or can you live with it for longer? And at what point you do certain things just to make that growth sustainable and not overload the teams that actually deal with the grunt of it. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. And yeah, if you're going to stay around, so if anyone has any questions for Al, we do have Q&As at the very end of the session. But for now, we will be moving to a fireside conversation with Emilie. Emilie, you've had a lot of experience in a couple of companies that were data privacy heavy as well. You're responsible for legal compliance, operations, so the whole lot. Would love to hear, from your experience across those companies, how has the maturity of the privacy evolved after Series B?
Yeah, so from my experience, Series B usually marks the beginning of a bit of a privacy evolution. Often, and like obviously building on what Al was mentioning, that prior to Series B, privacy, data protection, ownership, it's all quite devolved. Various parts of it are owned by multiple people, or it's a bit of an add-on to someone's responsibilities, often falling to a head of ops. But as growth and scalability become more of a priority, this approach often becomes quite unsustainable. As Al was mentioning, you want to make sure everything's in place before that, so it will facilitate that growth. But it's at this point where you might see the introduction of a compliance manager or single person teams responsible for the privacy program before that maybe evolves into a multi-person in-house compliance team. Personally, where I've been like part of that journey, I found structured support from Trustkeith in the form of the risk committees and the monthly meetings is really great at supporting that evolution.
That's incredibly important point to mention. I think we're going to come back to it over and over in our event. And how did privacy impact the go-to-market plans, especially in the regulated sectors?
Yeah, I think having a robust privacy program has actually been essential to support the go-to-market strategy in previous companies I've worked at. Previously, where we've sold B2B, for example, being able to confidently and quickly answer procurement due diligence questionnaires that they've had has been essential to generating revenue and moving those customers through the sales pipeline. So in regulated sectors where you're dealing with special category data like children's data, being like ISO 27001 accredited and having something like the Trustkeith app where you know everything is all in one place, it's easy to access, it's relevant to your business, has been essential to support that go-to-market strategy and unlock that further commercial potential, especially if there's a chance you're going to be audited by a regulator at any point. So having a robust privacy program, having your ISO 27001 certificate also becomes like a marketable selling point where you're able to position yourself as a safe and trustworthy platform to use, which then further, what's the word I'm looking for, like, it facilitates that go-to-market and becomes part of the strategy really.
Mm-hmm. And it's always great to hear the plans, and as a legal and compliance officer, you know exactly what you need to do, and then you need to convince every other person on the planet that this is important and that you should be doing it. So a very similar question that I asked to Al as well. How do you engage senior leadership team? How do you engage the rest of the team as well in those privacy efforts? And because essentially speaking from my experience, the preparation for raising another round can be really long, and it can be quite uncertain when we know very well how startups work. And sometimes you're like, if you need budget for this, we don't yet have money in the bank. So we don't yet have the resources to go through this thing that once we have the money in the bank, which is question mark of a date, we will actually need that thing the day after. So how do you navigate this? We don't really have the time for you. We don't want to really focus because like our focus right now is on fundraising, but we need to be ready.
Yeah, it's one that I've always battled with, but I've tried a few different approaches in the past. And in my opinion, one of the best ways to engage senior leadership is to demonstrate the value of privacy and embed it within a risk management strategy. So personally, for example, I found it really difficult in the past to effectively demonstrate the value and impact of, say, a legal and compliance team, because we don't contribute to X percentage of profit. It's not necessarily a really easy, like quantifiable and data-driven way to say, oh, doing this has generated X profit. And it can be really hard to apply metrics when you are trying to show revenue protection, because you can talk about the amount of money you've saved in terms of potential fines, but it all feels a bit arbitrary and a bit, like a bit abstract in those kind of situations. So using metrics, so like the Trustkeith audit score, is a great way to establish a baseline, show progress, and then provide a snapshot at any given time for the senior leadership team. But combining that data protection and privacy with the risk strategy is also essential. So in companies where we've not had an in-house data protection officer before, I've worked with the senior leadership team to categorize themes of risk. And this is all part of the risk management strategy. So in terms of like brand and reputation, data, infosec, all things like this. And we've ensured that each category has a senior stakeholder who is ultimately accountable for that theme of risk. And that way, it means that you always have someone in senior level meetings with a vested interest, because they are accountable for the thing and they have a clear view of the level of risk that they're willing to accept, which helps to reinforce how you think about implementing the privacy program, because that risk appetite will depending on where you're at in terms of that evolution, the particular company, what kind of data you're dealing with. Having someone in the senior leadership team who is taking it seriously is really helpful in that respect.
Definitely. I absolutely love the strategy. And I guess, again, maybe that's a conversation for another time, but like, how about the rest of the risk in the company? And yes, data protection, data privacy is a single part of the whole plan. So yeah, looking forward to diving into that at another time and exploring. And what do you think, what tone works best for privacy? Is it kind of really hardline or open and trusted? I've personally been in companies that have tried both, and I personally hate reading privacy notices of companies that I'm trying to use where I cannot understand anything. But what's your take on that?
I've also worked with both, and I think both have their pros and cons. I think when I very first started in my career, I worked for a company that appeared to have a very hardline approach. But I think that could have been to do with how junior I was in the company and like the fear I felt. But to me, it was very clear that there would be consequences if you caused a data breach. Not like crazy consequences. It'd be flagged to your manager. You might be required to attend extra training. There was something that would happen if you were consistently not following privacy guidelines and breaching the policy. But then obviously on the flip side of that, you risk employees not reporting breaches for fear of being punished. But then on the other hand, I've worked in smaller companies where a much more collaborative and approachable stance has been adopted. We all make mistakes. We were talking about it at the beginning of the session. And you want people and employees to feel like they can tell you about a privacy related issue. But you also don't want employees to have sort of a laissez-faire approach, to think that there are no consequences to it. In my opinion, it's about finding a balance. And I know that's a bit of a wishy-washy answer, but personally, I really like Trustkeith's model, as it balances that approachability with structure, which will then also grow alongside a business. And yeah, for me personally, I prefer the more collaborative approach. Like, I'd rather know about the thing, but yeah, depends on the size of the company and lots of different factors.
Yeah, I think that culture of a company, that means a lot. And the fear-mongering never works in the longer term, because you really need to know if something's happened, and you need to write that dreaded email or now fill out a form. I don't know which one is that. Haven't done this for a while. to the SEO, how do you make data protection engaging for the team, especially folks? So again, personally, I have managed sizable teams in customer support, and they are the ones talking to the customer all the time. And sometimes things just slip. And also those are the teams that have fairly high turnover. How do you make it engaging, and how do you make sure that everyone's almost like on the same level?
Yeah, again, I've really pondered this question because it's something that I've thought about a lot over the years, where I've tried to make it engaging and fun. I think it's making it relevant to them. Like, not everybody in the business needs to know everything about data protection. It's like what is relevant to them in their role. So using the customer service experience team as an example, like, they are the people that are often on the front lines, like picking up the calls, like needing to validate that's the person. So it's focusing in on that and making sure that it's relevant for them, but also embedded within the policy. When you pick up the phone to someone, are there certain things that you need to ask for and validate? But rather than it being like, oh, we do this because it's privacy, it's we do this because it's best practice and this is our company policy. And it's embedding that best practice within the policies that will enable you to grow and scale. And really, that would be my view. Is just like, when you're trying to create a new policy or process, it's like asking yourself, what is best practice, and embedding that in at that point, rather than going on and it being this extra add-on, being like, today we're going to have data protection training. And because nobody looks forward to it particularly. In that, I feel like I'm digging myself a hole here. I can see Kayleigh laughing. But yeah, it's making it relevant is my takeaway for that.
Yeah. And it's sometimes more difficult to do than other times. I think generally us being operations leaders, I think we're not really understood very well by other folks in the company who I don't even know what they think we do day to day. But a lot of the times I had my role described as boring. And then, so this is operations in general. And then you start digging a little bit deeper and you say the words like legal or compliance or finance or whatever else you have on your plate. And I'm thinking about, like when the company starts up, there's a couple of people, co-founders, and then you grow the team. And then this inflection point happens whenever it is for different companies. Let's say it's A to B. It's not just flicking the switch. It's not, oh, so from today, we're becoming really aware of creating trust for our customers. This has to happen over time. So yeah, I love what you're saying. And I think it's the culture that we build over time instead of just flicking the switch from today, we're going to be doing something differently. I couldn't agree with you more. Brilliant, Emilie. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. Kayleigh, I am a massive fan of your quotes. I feel like I need to print it out and put it on my wall, and for every single company to just go by, yeah, data protection is people protection. Take it away.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, data protection is people protection is my personal motto. So you will find me quoting it back to people all of the time, to the point where, frankly, they get sick of it. But what I'm going to talk through throughout the course of the next 10 minutes or so is really my recommendations on 4 steps that you guys as operations leaders in your fields can really use to help get privacy right in your organizations. So the first one, and actually this is really critical, and I'm going to keep coming back to this point, so bear with me, right? The first key thing you need to do is to know your why. And that sounds really cheesy and really corporate American, I know, but it is actually really crucial and really important. So what do I mean by know your why? So what I mean by know your why is know why data protection is important for your organization. What do you need from data protection? Trust Keith, we believe that data protection is a cultural problem with a cultural solution. And I strongly feel that's the case. Data protection is people protection. But what do you need or want to achieve as a business? What are the requirements of your business? Take it beyond that bureaucratic task list, that checkbox, and really think about some of the key things, like how is risk management embedded in your organization, and how does privacy play into that? What's important for you as a business? Is it protecting customer trust? Al mentioned that, like trust being really important. Is it safeguarding business continuity? Is it meeting your ethical responsibilities? Like something in there is going to be key to data protection. You need to be really honest about where you're at as well. So if you're not doing things well, be honest about it. Like That's the best way to start. Meet your organization where it's at now. Well, in Trust Keith, we talk a lot about like helping organizations to define the scope and their risk appetite. It's really important for you to be able to look at your organization and say, hey, we work with customers. Like, customers are the key to everything we do. We want to be known for respecting our customers. Customer trust is top. Here's what we need to do to achieve that. Or you might be in a regulated industry thinking, okay, actually the regulator expects X, Y, Z from us, and this is why we need to do it. So that why is really important. And then that leads into getting leadership buy-in. Getting leadership buy-in is absolutely critical. Culture is best when it's from the top down. So if data protection is a cultural problem with a cultural solution, your leadership are going to be a really key part of that solution. So it's absolutely essential to bring them along with you. Unfortunately, not everyone is as fortunate as Al, who has their leadership really strongly bought in straight away. So sometimes we need to be able to really think about, like, how can we bring leadership along with us as operational professionals? You guys know what the risks are. You guys know how the business works. And now how do you get that leadership buy-in? So a couple of things that you could think about are use storytelling. I would really strongly advise everyone to avoid that story where data protection is a checklist. Avoid the story where you're just worried about a fine from the regulator, because eventually someone's going to go and have a look at the regulator and realize that they don't often fine in your sector. And then your argument has gone kaput. So avoid that. Tell stories. Ask leadership, like, what happens if there's a data breach in your team? How does that affect your team? How does it affect the services that you are going to offer? How are you going to think about the market strategy, as Emilie mentioned? How can you bring that in? Talk about the market strategy. Really reinforcing that risk goes beyond fines. Think about reputational damage. You might not get a fine, but you might need to spend a lot of money containing a breach. You might have serious reputational damage. Your customers may not trust you anymore. And if they don't trust you, are they going to continue to work with you? The why here should really be grounded in business impact, and it should be grounded in strategic alignment. And that will help data protection resonate as a leadership responsibility, not just an operations issue, not just a compliance issue, but a leadership responsibility. Emilie mentioned using metrics, and this is great. Like, using metrics where you can. It gives people something to really hook into. If you can see a number, if you can see a metric, it gives you something to hold on to, but also to be able to track through time. It can be a really good aid to buy-in. Trust Keith, the platform, provides an audit score, and we find that can be really impactful, and it allows really good strategic conversation about how much risk the organization is willing to tolerate. Okay, so they're my top two. The next one, know your data mapping. And I can tell, because I can feel the vibes through the Zoom, right? That you guys like the first two are storytelling and messaging, and that's exciting. And now you're talking to me about data mapping. Kayleigh, I'm bored. Stop it. And I do get that data mapping is often seen as really tedious, but bring it back to the why. Like, why do data mapping? Why is data mapping important? Data mapping is important so you know what you're protecting and what the risks are. If you don't know where your data is, you can't know that. You can't understand what data you've got. You can't understand what the risks are, and you can't take meaningful steps towards a really good program if you don't know those key things. So it is an incredibly meaningful act, and it's difficult to truly understand the risks in the organization unless you have that in place. The long shot of that is that you need to ensure that you've got data mapping and that you speak to the key people. Data mapping shouldn't just be sitting with operations. It shouldn't just be one person trying to go off and understand where all the data is. You should be talking to your stakeholders. We call them our data champions, people from those functions across the business who actually really know what they're doing, who really know where that data lives, who really knows what they're using, who knows if they're using an AI program that they haven't told anyone else about. All of those things are going to be really important. Again, Trust Keith, we've got data mapping templates that we use that we find really helpful. The key thing about this, though, is to remember that data mapping is not just a one and done. You don't do it once and then forget about it. It will evolve as your organization evolves, as you go through those series of funding, as you grow, as you develop, you're going to be doing new things, and your data map is always going to be changing. Your data register is always going to be changing. I like to say that data protection is like brushing your teeth. You never wake up one morning, do it and think, that's it, done, never going to do that again. If you do, your teeth are going to fall out. So what you need to do is keep doing it. all of the time. Keep on top of it, just like brushing your teeth. So first, know your why, get your leadership buy-in, know your data, and then last but absolutely not least, train your team. When I say train your team, go beyond a tick box exercise. As Emilie said, very few people, except me, very few people look forward to the data protection training. They don't see it in their calendar and think, yes, that's going to be an hour that I'm going to really enjoy. They look at it and think, oh gosh, that's an opportunity for me to catch up on my emails while my camera's turned off. Really think about how you can make it proactively and engaging for your team members. This is your opportunity to really embed privacy into your company culture. Okay, so training shouldn't be a tick box. It should protect institutional knowledge. Think about keeping all of that knowledge that you've got safe, so that if Al wins the lottery and disappears tomorrow, all of the institutional knowledge that he holds doesn't disappear off with him. That's as important to data protection as is talking through the principles of the GDPR. Okay. Not every team member is going to be bought into the story you told your leadership, and not every team member is going to care about the 7 principles of the GDPR. What they're going to care about is how it relates to their role. So think about how you can tell them stories, how you can shape the message so that they really understand it, so that it really matters to them. Can you tell a story about how it protects vulnerable customers, how you avoid breaches that could cost jobs, ensure continuity in a crisis moment? I really do encourage people to think about using training and tell stories. If you can give real examples or scenarios that create emotional buy-in, then you're going to really bring people along with you. So previously, when I worked for a charity, I always like to talk about that wee old lady in Kirkcaldy who's giving us a regular donation from her pension, because that wee old lady felt real and a random statistic didn't. People act differently when they believe that they're protecting something that's important. So not just following the rules that they don't see the value of, thinking about how it really impacts people, how it impacts them, how it impacts their colleagues, how it impacts your customers is so important. Trustkeith uses role-based training and long-term compliance knowledge management. Both of these things are really important. So that role-based training, if you can use it, if you can tailor it to the teams that you're talking to, so your marketing team get a slightly different training to your compliance team, get a slightly different training to your HR team, fantastic. Again, that's really how you embed that culture. So broadly in conclusion, data protection succeeds when it's lived by people across the organization, not just when it's written into a policy that's put on the shelf and no one reads it. Okay. So my 4 key tips: know your why, because when you understand why data protection matters, it stops it being a boring task we do and it becomes part of who we are as an organization. Get your leadership buy-in, because reputation and resilience depend on the data you protect, and cultural change is most effective when it starts from the top. Know your data, because you cannot understand where your risks are until you know what data you hold. And train your team, because everyone should play a part in protecting data. Shouldn't just sit with operations. Data protection is people protection, and all of the people should protect the data. I'll pause there.
Gosh, Kayleigh, that was the perfectly delivered, I don't know, prayer for data protection. Honestly, thank you so much for sharing. And I am pretty sure that we will be putting your words on paper and sharing with the rest of the community, as well as also all the insights that Al and Emilie have shared. We have a couple of minutes for the Q&As. I think we're going to go to just the most important question that I think everybody has. What about the use of AI in your organization? And yeah, that's one thing that popped up over the last couple of years. And Anik is actually digging a little bit deeper, asking, are you being asked about your use of AI in the service you provide to customers? And what about the use of AI internally for business purposes, not as a customer service? I don't know, maybe Al will go to you first and then rotate, Emilie and Kayleigh.
AI across is really just, it's always product that we want to utilize more and more. But there's also the need to be very vigilant with the results it gives to us, where that results are stored, and are the results correct? So we always have a checkpoint where we use a lot of manual power before we double check and verify the data, that the answers that AI give us. we try to standardize or keep to a model, and then make sure that the models fit the purpose. Data is correctly stored, regulated, and it's not shared anywhere else. They're the key point for us. It's still evolving because everything changes very rapidly with AI. Is it a right model? Is it whatever else? Is it just a logic case? Still something we're coming to terms with.
Yeah, I think it's always going to be the case for the next, I don't know how many years. Whatever comes after AI, I have no idea, but we'll fund that too. Thank you so much, Al. Emilie, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think looking at the questions, breaking it into the various points where we're being asked about AI in the service that we provide customers, like going back to Kayleigh's analogy of brushing your teeth, I think it's a case of updating the privacy policy or the privacy notice on your website and being transparent. And as you evolve with the use of AI, is like continuously updating that to better reflect what you're doing. That way, when you are being asked, you can just direct people to the privacy notice. That's the company line. That's what you're saying. And then you can keep updating that. And about the use of AI internally for business purposes, but rather than the customer service way, is we took a stance to basically buy one of the company packages for Google Gemini. And then we basically said ChatGPT cannot be used. We are a Google Gemini company because we had a Google suite. And we did some very light-hearted training with the company all hands saying, this is what you can use it for. Please don't put any customer data in it. And just doing those constant reminders. We know that people are using it, so there's no point trying to say you can't use it for this thing. So it's about giving people the tools to do it compliantly and in the best way forward, and then evolving the policy as the use and AI continues to develop. Well, that's the stance that we've taken so far.
Thanks so much, Emilie. And Kayleigh.
Yeah, so if AI is that sexy new topic that everyone's talking about and thinking about, right? So it's unsurprising to hear that questions are coming about AI and that customers are asking those questions as well. One thing that I would note is that like where your AI is processing personal information, the rules around data protection, the UK GDPR, the GDPR still apply. So like those core principles of data protection, the GDPR is still king, even in a world of AI. Sometimes it's just a bit more complex. As Emilie mentioned, be transparent about what you're doing. Be transparent about how you're using it. Update your privacy notice. Make sure that you've got like answers to the questions that customers are likely to ask. But internally, have a real think about how you want to use AI. Think about your why. Again, what's the purpose of using AI? And make sure you've got a good policy on how you think it is acceptable for AI to be used within your organization. And again, make sure that people know what that is. There's no point in having a policy if people don't know what the policy is. So make sure that people know about it. Make sure you know what AI is being used and how. Have that record of how it's being used, because if you don't, people are going to do random things and they're going to start plugging in stuff that they shouldn't. If you can have a little bit of an open doors session where you say, look, we know you might have been using it. Just tell us. Just tell us what you're doing. And then my last thing on AI would be, if you can, leverage it. Like leverage the fact that everyone is talking about AI to your advantage when you think about data protection. AI is the sexy topic. Can you use AI as the sexy topic to sneakily tell people about data protection and why it's important? When people in your organization are saying, what do we do about AI? We must do something. Use it. Say, great, let's have a training and talk to them about data protection, because those fundamentals stay the same, but you can really use that topic to get people interested.
Thanks so much, Kayleigh. You did make data protection sound very interesting. I think there's like a little bit of a trend in Just Keep team, to be honest. Thank you so much. We have 1 minute to go, so I'll just really quickly wrap up what I have heard in the whole conversation. I think, Kayleigh, I'm just going to say what you said. Know your why for data protection, why you need to do it. I think this is by far the most important part of this conversation, because if you can explain your why to the rest of the team, that is going to be so much easier. Bring along the leadership. Tell a story if you don't know how to do that. Start building the data protection culture from early on. So you don't need to out of a sudden do it at the inflection point, whatever it is, and start doing all the hard work before, I guess, like when it's already too late. And have foundations and structures early on, so that when there's time to scale, you can just snap your fingers and be ready for it and know your data. One other thing to mention is that Kayleigh is in the Operations Nation community chat. So if you have any data protection related questions, she is literally at your fingertips. And Emilie and Al, thank you both so much for sharing your stories. They were great to hear, and I think a lot of people related to them. And Kayleigh and Trustkeep team, thanks so much for being there for so many of us who don't just want to do it ourselves for the most part. And thanks for Becky and Mick, our Operations Nation team, events, learning, and partnerships for helping to pull this all together. Thank you so much, everybody.